Good morning, I'm Lisa Hand with Windhorse Antiques, and I'm joining you today from the beautiful Bloom Gardens with Schreiner's Iris Gardens. Normally I do a presentation on the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, and this year we're going to bring it to you virtually. So let me introduce you to the Victorian and Edwardian language of the flowers. Today I'm attired in an 1860 wrapper dress. I've put this together as if a lady was walking through her garden. So I'm only wearing 2 petticoats. She might have worn 5, but I don't have a hoop on with it. This is from the Civil War time frame. And it would be what ladies would wear to receive their friends or to walk around their own property. There is a language little known. Lovers claim it as their own. Its symbols smile upon the land, wrought by nature's wondrous hand. And in their subtle beauty speak of life and joy for those who seek, for love divine and sunny hours, in the language of the flowers. That was written in 1875. While the history of floral meanings dates back to ancient China, the folks who really developed it the most and made florography an art form was during the reign of Queen Victoria, between 1837 and 1901. It became a coded, complex language that had sentiment and other various and sometimes surprising meanings. Flowers and plants were used to communicate during a time when you really couldn't directly talk to folks due to some conventions. As a long list of botanicals grew, books defining the meanings of various plants, flowers, called floriography dictionaries, were published, and the Victorians, in true fashion, also had these meanings spread out to decor, to literature, to fine art, even jewelry. To actually send these coded messages, you would often do them in a bouquet, or what is called a tussie-mussy. It's a small, they're also called nosegays. It's a small grouping of flowers, starting off with herbs, and then 1 or 2 or 3 other flowers added to it, and the combination results in a meaning. A way a bouquet was held, once it was received, could indicate acceptance, acknowledgement, or even disapproval. If I held it to my heart, I accepted your sentiment and approved of it. If I held it to my waist, I was not sure. And if I did this with it, no. Please go away, do not bother me again. A return bouquet could be a hoped-for response, or it could be a brutal cut, because some of these plants did actually have negative meanings. A marigold, for example, could be grief or vulgar mind or jealousy. There's no positive meaning for a marigold, which I can't quite figure out because I quite enjoy how they look. Also, there were hundreds of these dictionaries published, and sometimes they had different meanings for the plants. So it was very important that you had the same florography that you were using to decipher the meaning when it came to you as the person who sent it to you. Because you could easily confuse lavender, because it both means devotion and virtue and distrust. Not sure exactly where they got the devotion and virtue, but I do know the distrust comes from snakes normally nest in lavender bushes, and so a nasty surprise from a snake resulted in lavender being distrust. In addition to the nosegays, there was also jewelry that could hold your little tussie-mussy. This is a very small one, obviously. It is an actual Victorian brooch. I've put lavender into it, and as small as it is, that's about all you can. You could put some lavender, you could put some, and this would be for devotion, not for distrust, of course, or you could put a forget-me-not, or maybe a single rosebud. And it's an actual brooch, and it would then pin onto your clothing. And you could wear it either to send a message or to send a response. One of the things I didn't mention is my nosegay actually does mean something. I have honeysuckle, rosemary, and a rosebud. And what this stands for is the remembrance of our ties of true love. So this would be an appropriate one for a husband to give a wife, or good friends to give each other. And this was very common with women in the Victorian era and in the Edwardian era, where they would actually exchange sentiments. So some of the most amazing valentines and bouquets and tussie-mussies went back and forth between women because they had close friendships like that, and it was how they expressed it. We didn't have email or Facebook or anything else. So we normally have this set up so you can actually do a tussie-mussie of your own here in the garden. We will make sure that the instructions to be able to do it at home are up on both Schreiner's and Windhorse Antiques website. Additionally, one more note on nosegays. They had a practical purpose as well, because the Victorian streets were sometimes fragrant and not in a good way. So you would carry it and make sure that you didn't smell whatever else was in the streets. And the honeysuckle, of course, would do a great job for that. Now, as we look around the garden, I want to talk about a few of the flowers that are here, and we're of course going to start with the iris. And what's really interesting is, unlike some other flowers where there are more than one scale of meaning, anywhere from negative to positive, the iris is all positive meanings. It starts off, it is the national flower of France. So anytime you see a fleur de lis, that is influenced by an iris, and that's what it's based on. It's faith, hope, wisdom and valor, my compliments. So anytime you receive an iris, it's always a positive message from the sender. There's also lilies here, and the predominant meaning of lily is the first emotions of love. Your lilacs can vary based on the color. So majesty or purity is for a purple lilac, and your white lilac is the beginning of love. And that's pretty common. White flowers are almost always innocence or purity or a pure love of some type. They also can refer to, if they're like a white rose bud, would be for a child. The peonies are devotion. Your pansies are pleasant thoughts. I think there's some forget-me-nots throughout the garden, and the forget-me-nots are exactly that. They're remembrance or forget-me-not. And they are very powerful and very reoccurring theme in almost all Victorian and up into the Edwardian. What's interesting is when you start looking at more of the later florographies, they start expanding out the meanings based on what color the flower was. So one of the things that actually comes up to today is roses. So your red roses are for true love, your pink are the first bud of love, your white, as I just mentioned, are for purity or innocence, and if you get a yellow rose, that's just for friendship. I did mention that there's some flowers that have a very wide range of meanings, and pinks and carnations are one of those, and they range from I will never forget you and yes to no, go away, don't bother me ever again, all depending on what color the flower is. These practices of floral communication go through the end of the Victorian era, which was 1901, and continue into the Edwardian era, and the Edwardian era goes until World War I. They begin to disappear at that point. There's a couple different reasons. First of all, World War I being as catastrophic as it was for the entire world, many frivolities disappeared. The other thing is at the beginning of the 20th century, you start having more freedom of communication, you have other communications means, and the requirement of doing things subtly or through this secret language didn't really exist anymore. So folks started to move away from it. However, there still did exist some flowers that had specific meanings. In 1905, Eugene Fields penned Buttercup Poppy Forget-Me-Not in his childlike sounding but very adult edition of poems called In Winkaway Land. It's a pensive, sweet, very Victorian tribute to a child, and it reflects the original meaning of the poppy. It reads, Buttercup Poppy Forget-Me-Not, these three bloomed in a garden spot, and once all merry with song and play, a little one heard three voices say, Shine or shadow, summer or spring, oh, thy child with tangled hair and laughing eyes, we three shall bring each an offering passing fair. The little one did not understand, and they bent and kissed the dimpled hand. Buttercup gamboled all day long, sharing the little one's mirth and song, and then stealing along on misty gleams, Poppy came, bringing the sweetest dreams. Playing and dreaming, that was all, till once the sleeper would not wake. Kissing the little face under the pall, we thought of the words the third flower spake. And we found betimes in a hallowed spot the solace in the peace of forget-me-not. Buttercup shareth the joy of day, glint with gold the hours of play. Bringeth the poppy sweet repose, when hands would fold and eyes would close. And after it all the play and sleep of a little life, what cometh then? To hearts that ache and eyes that weep, a wee flower brings God peace again. Each one serveth its tender lot, buttercup, poppy, forget-me-not. Everyone in the Victorian and Edwardian world would have understood the meaning of all three of those flowers. A mere 10 years later, the meaning of the red poppy was changed forever through a poem written by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae in 1915. He had just seen a dear friend killed in battle, and as he looked across the fields and saw the poppies, he penned what became the most famous poem of that war, In Flanders Fields. After World War I, the red remembrance poppy became the most recognized international symbol of soldiers who had fallen in battle. I'd like to share In Flanders Fields with you today. As I said before, this is normally done on Sunday and Memorial Day weekend. I, as a veteran, do like to read this to everyone and remind folks that that's exactly what that poppy stands for. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunsets glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch, be it yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. As I mentioned, I would invite you to remember on Memorial Day that when you see the red poppies, that they are a remembrance for those who have fallen in battle. And they have been defined as such for more than 100 years. At the dawn of the 21st century, there's a resurgence of language of the flowers and its traditions. Novels included it, florists started including them in their bouquets again, and new florographies were printed. So part of this influence could be traced to Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, who in her chosen wedding bouquet reflected history, love, and personal messages. Her bouquet, in the all-white royal tradition, was assembled with specific flowers, selected for both their beauty and their meaning. She started with Lily of the Valley, which is a return of happiness. Then Sweet William. Have to love it when a plant actually matches up with your future spouse's name, which its meaning is gallantry as well. So her gallant Prince William. Hyacinth, consistency of love. Ivy, which is for fidelity, marriage, wedding, and friendship. And myrtle, which is an emblem of marriage and love. With the myrtle, we're going to come full circle back to Queen Victoria. The myrtle that was in Kate's bouquet came from a plant that was planted by Queen Victoria. It was from a sprig that was in a nosegay that was given to her by Prince Albert's grandmother. Every single royal bride since Queen Victoria has had a sprig of that myrtle bush in their bouquet. Traditions, remembrance, sentiment, and beauty, all in the transitory language of the flowers.